Good evening and welcome to this special edition of Cronkite News. I'm Lauren Ashley. Thanks for joining us. Cronkite News made a commitment in honor of Black History Month to highlight and recognize a series of African American community leaders here in Arizona. From civic activism to the realms of music, arts, and sports, tonight we bring you a special compilation of our coverage.
February has been synonymous with Black history for decades, but over the weekend, hundreds gathered to celebrate the successes and learn about the issues facing a more specific community. Cronkite News reporter Audrey Wheel attended the 5th Annual African American Conference on Disabilities, which kicked off a weekend of events celebrating Black History, Black History Month. The conference covered a wide range of topics. The biggest issue at hand, justice in the Black deaf community, when some say that cultural barriers combined with communication barriers can make a fair legal process nearly impossible.
The large issue that I've seen mostly in the criminal legal system is a lack of understanding cultural competence about deaf culture, deaf communication, or even Black culture, Black deaf culture.
Talila Lewis founded the country's first and only national database for deaf prisoners, and she spent the past decade investigating possible wrongful conviction cases.
A lot of these cases I don't have physical evidence showing, but I can show you that they couldn't communicate with their defense counsel, they couldn't communicate with the judge, they couldn't communicate with law enforcement, and to me that should be more than sufficient to reopen a case.
In her keynote speech, she mentioned several wrongfully convicted individuals who have been exonerated. And while that's the goal, she says fighting for even the little things is a struggle.
Deaf prisoners are completely isolated. I've been working for 4 years lobbying the Federal Communications Commission, the Department of Justice, just to get video phones in our prisons. Video phones are free.
But those who attended the conference said the crux of the issue transcends race and ability, that it's a basic human right.
Bottom line is access to communication. We don't have the ability to equally participate in a variety of aspects of life.
If we're unable to communicate what our needs are, what our concerns are, what our desires are, then our lives are not as full as they should be. And certainly if you're in prison, and particularly wrongfully, then that impact is even greater.
The Department of Corrections says only 12 Arizona prisoners are deaf, and they're able to request certain accommodations, like a sign language interpreter. In the Media Center, Audrey Wheel, Cronkite News.
In honor of Black History Month, Cronkite News brings you a series of stories of those who have made a difference in Arizona's African American communities.
Tempe History Museum's African American Advisory Committee celebrates Black History Month each year and is doing so for the 7th year straight. Live performance by Dr. Fish, which started with the hymn Lift Every Voice. The exhibit takes a look back at the music that played a huge role in African American lives. It also features paintings and sculptures by the Diverse Artists Collective of Arizona.
Our mission is to preserve the history of African Americans in Tempe, the state and beyond, and also to provide a forum for those interested in African American history.
Throughout February, Tempe History Museum will celebrate Black history with performances, art, and guest presenters.
One Man in the Valley uses a less traditional form of art to help pioneer a path for African American men. Cronkite News reporter Elena Mendoza tells us how he uses tailoring to make a difference.
It was the tailoring that really made me feel like I really made a contribution to the Black community.
What started out as something his parents wanted him to do quickly turned into a passion for Shytel Glover.
I could tell his gift right away. He has a very remarkable way of expressing things.
Shortly after high school, Glover's natural talent and location in New York City led him to design custom garments for Broadway producer Alan Lerner and for The Ed Sullivan Show. But as an African-American man in the 60s, it wasn't always easy for everyone to accept his craftsmanship success.
Because they weren't educated to accept me that way. In other words, he's this, and even if he's not that, he's this. You know, he can't be my equal.
A breakthrough moment in Glover's career was when he received the Fashion Award of Merit from the Custom Tailors and Designers Association in 1985. What earned him the award was a suit made out of cashmere and lynx worth about $20,000 and completely made by hand.
All of this went into that suit.
And when the other tailors at the Custom Tailors and Designers Association saw this, they had to recognize that he was the last, one of the few, I think they said 5 people at the time that knew the craft at that level,
which elevated him to master tailor status. Glover recalls the reaction from the crowd when he walked out on stage to model the suit as total shock.
Huh? That guy? And so that opened up doors where doors had previously had been closed.
Glover retired from the art of tailoring in 1998 and now spends his time mentoring and empowering people to see their own worth through the power of fashion.
I've learned quite a bit, and the bottom line is how wonderful it is to be who I am, and how wonderful it is for everyone to be who they are.
He says if there's one thing his struggles have taught him, it's that there's hope to overcome all things. In Phoenix, Elena Mendoza, Cronkite News.
The African-American business sector in Arizona is way below national average. Reporter Ben Brown talked with several business leaders in the Phoenix area to find out why.
It has been a struggle for a lot of African-American business owners in Arizona, and after talking with business leaders in the valley, it really comes down to 3 things. Clarence McAllister has lived in Arizona for 3 decades, but he says time has stood still when it comes to opportunities for his general contracting business.
I do not see a significant increase in Black-owned businesses, at least among the circles that I get around.
The light rail, Tempe Sun Devil Stadium, and South Mountain Freeway expansion are among the few projects that McAllister says encourage bids for minority-owned businesses.
Especially the state, there aren't any incentives for minority-owned businesses in general.
According to the 2007 census, African Americans make up about 5% of Arizona's population, and Black-owned businesses account for just 2% of the total number of firms in the state. That compares to the national average of 7%. Also, Arizona has no well-known African American communities, which Black Chamber of Commerce president says is another challenge.
Like in a lot of other cities, you'll have maybe a conglomerate of Black business in one part of the city. We don't have that here.
And access to capital presents another hurdle.
My wife and I started 16 years ago just using credit cards, personal credit cards. We weren't able to get a loan.
Miss White's Golden Rule Cafe is one of the few Black-owned businesses in downtown Phoenix.
We've been in business for 52 years, going on 53 years.
Downtown Phoenix still doesn't have a strong Black presence, and the owner says his cafe's enduring success is mostly due to non-Black customers. Back in December, the Phoenix City Council approved the My Brother's Keeper local action plan, which aims at working with the community to help promote opportunities and resources for people of color. In the Broadcast Center, Ben Brown, Cronkite News.
Continuing our series of stories to honor Arizona's Black history. A new mural at the ASU West campus is taking shape. Cronkite News reporter Lauren Ashley spoke with the student muralist behind this project about her mission.
The mural is a depiction of Mike Brown. Mike Brown was an 18-year-old who was slayed in Ferguson, Missouri, almost 2 years ago. He never made it to college. He just barely graduated high school.
Kyra Trent, an Arizona State University junior, says she was inspired to celebrate the resilience of the Black community for Black History Month through art.
With this mural is to expand people's ideas of what race relations looks like in America, how we can fix them, what we can do to encourage people talking about them, and just to make them overall just a little bit better.
The mural Kyra designed is called Still I Rise, after the poem by Maya Angelou.
So far in this country, but we still have so much farther to go. And resilience is about remembering where you came from, acknowledging the pain, and moving forward despite of that.
Kyra quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? To describe her role in sparking conversations.
It's so easy to just go on Twitter and type #Black Lives Matter
and then go to a march real quick and say that you did something to help the cause, but it's entirely different to create a socially engaged art practice like the one that I'm trying to do, and just really get involved and get other people involved and start a healthier conversations about it.
The mural is expected to be completed tomorrow. In Glendale, Lauren Ashley, Cronkite News.
Students are invited to help Kyra finish painting the mural tomorrow at the ASU West campus from noon to 4 p.m.
Music and dance have been a key part of Black culture for many centuries, from its main roots in Africa to today's pop culture.
Cronkite News reporter Johnny Soto explains how two different generations can march to the beat of the same drum.
Dance moves such as the jitterbug, Lindy Hop, and uprock have been incorporated into America's pop culture throughout the years. However, it's important to note the origin of these dance moves.
Traditionally and culturally, it's been in the African culture for so many years that you can't help but to notice the connections to the rhythms, to the music, the sound, the essence of what it brings through hip hop, through jazz, through all genres of music.
Ever since its big splash in the 1970s, hip hop has been associated with both Black and American culture. Rapper John "CANDYMAN" SHAFFER worked alongside NWA when the hip-hop movement became more activist a decade later, and states that they got their inspiration from looking back.
It all stems from, the motherland. A lot of that, our culture, the breakdancing, the way we move our bodies, the way we play the drums, that's where it originated from. Like, this is not something that we just made up on our own. There's roots to this, legitimate roots.
Knocking while I'm hip hopping. Many people say my lyrics are shocking just because of the simple subject.
Today's hip-hop scene is much different from when it originated. However, getting back to basics is still a key for inspiration.
Right now we see a lot of artists doing that. The J. Cole's, the Kendrick Lamars, all of those people that now are putting the skills and the lyrics back into the content, saying something like when it started.
Some of hip-hop's instrumentals can be traced back to Africa, and as Arizona's Kwambe Omowale African Drum and Dance Theater demonstrates, there's a variety of instruments that can be used as a muse for a beat.
One of the things that we try to do, although we focus on West Africa, is to show the differences between the countries and between the ethnic groups that are within the countries.
Continuing the heritage of Black culture, SHAFFER oversees the MC portion of the DJ program that Scottsdale Community College offers and hopes to teach its students the meaning of hip-hop and where it comes from. In the Broadcast Center, Johnny Soto, Cronkite News.
Phoenix is not known as a center of civil rights activism, but a church in the Valley had one of the most noted leaders deliver a sermon there. Cronkite News reporter Alexis Dominguez gives us a look into the rich history of the Tanner Chapel.
Historic Tanner AME Church is the oldest African-American church in the state of Arizona. Reverend Benjamin Thomas Sr., pastor of the church, says Tanner has always been a part in the civil rights movement.
And this is where we met, this is what we organized, accomplished to impact and improve the lives of people of color.
Tanner is the only church in Arizona where Martin Luther King Jr. is known to have given a sermon.
Dr. King had an opportunity to preach at historic Tanner AME Church. They had a meeting here, and this church was the only place that he had an opportunity other than ASU to come and actually be a part of and set up a community meeting.
Dr. King spoke for 5 minutes in front of NAACP members.
I can assure you that it is a privilege to be in the city of Phoenix and the state of Arizona.
King went on to speak about racial injustice as a national problem.
In a real sense, if this problem is to be solved, people of goodwill all over the nation must come to see that racial injustice is wrong.
Reverend Thomas Sr. says he is proud to be a pastor in such a hallowed place.
It started right here, and we do have information to verify the fact that he was alive and here and well.
The Tanner Historic Chapel was granted a designated historic landmark in 2015 and is the first African-American church in Arizona with this recognition. In Phoenix, Alexis Dominguez, Cronkite News.
The Martin Luther King audio you just heard came from a reel that cost $3 at a Goodwill. People often go to Goodwill looking for hidden treasures, and Mary Scanlon was no exception. Scanlon collects records and was looking to find something intriguing to add to her collection. But Scanlon didn't realize that she was going to find a piece of Arizona's history and the civil rights movement. Scanlon was at Goodwill near 32nd Street and Thomas Road, where she came across reels in a box. The reels included audio and photos that show that Martin Luther King Jr. was in Phoenix.
As it happened, the very first one that I picked up had written on the side of it something like Martin Luther King, Tempe, Arizona, 1964. And that was really fortuitous because all the rest of them, for the most part, either didn't have writing on them at all, or they said Lincoln Ragsdale on them. And that was a name that at the time I didn't recognize.
Scanlon donated the footage to ASU, and you can find a copy at the ASU library.
New statistics show that Black-owned businesses grew at a rapid pace during the recession, especially here in Arizona. Cronkite News reporter Samantha Witherwax is live with the details.
The recession hurt most Americans, but maybe not one sector. Black-owned businesses increased nationally, but even more so in Arizona.
The reason for the explosive growth during that time period is at the same time we were experiencing the government and the financial markets contracting and putting a lot of folks out of work.
The Census Bureau said that Black-owned businesses grew 34% nationally between 2007 and 2012, and Arizona almost doubled that with an increase of 51%. Carl Brown at Howard University says the increase can also be credited to a younger generation joining in.
Baby boomers are starting to retire, and a lot of them that have businesses are looking for someone to take over their business.
KERWIN Brown, president and CEO of the Black Chamber of Arizona, also says that retirement is part of the reason for the spike.
A lot of very well-educated, very passionate people that formerly were part of the corporate world were possibly displaced or taken early retirement. I think that could be certainly a part of our percentage increase.
While there may have been a silver lining to the recession, there is still a cloud hanging over Black-owned businesses. African Americans continue to be underrepresented among business owners compared to the overall Black population. Carl Brown says Black-owned businesses may be peaking.
I think we'll see a leveling off because now the government is hiring and private sector is hiring.
Carl Brown also believes that the nature of our economy will come back into play soon.
Right now we're in a growth spurt, and after growth comes what? A recession.
Just as cycles go down, they are certain to come back up, leaving these two experts optimistic for the future of Black-owned businesses. Live in Washington, Samantha Witherwax, Cronkite News.
An ASU student's mural for Black History Month is sparking much emotion throughout the campus. Cronkite News reporter Lauren Ashley spoke with students about the piece.
After working over 4 days, the mural is finally complete. The Still I Rise mural, designed by ASU Kyra Trent, has impacted the campus. Corey Gray, an ASU student from St. Louis, Missouri, cried when she first saw the mural.
It was a great gesture because you really don't know what other people outside of your city feel about it. So being here, being away from all of my family, being away from pretty much everybody I know, and having this to remind you of your city, it makes me happy.
Inside of the words I Rise are names like Sandra Bland, Trayvon Martin, those who have lost their lives to injustice and those who are fighting for equality among everyone. ASU student Ninette Gonzalez felt hopeful that people like Kyra are making statements through her art.
There was more things like this, you know, just more messages, not just in 1 month, but let's say like all the time. You know?
Kyra wanted to spark healthy conversation, and that's what happened. Students from South America stood around, took pictures, and asked Kyra about who the person was.
Learned a lot about myself. I learned that I had a drive to want to start conversations. I don't know that I was all the way prepared to know what conversations we're going to start.
Kyra left some blank areas open, inviting students to come and fill in names of people deserving to take their place here. In Glendale, Lauren Ashley, Cronkite News.
Cronkite News is continuing our mission to recognize African American community leaders this month.
Tonight, reporter Brandi Henry tells us how one West Valley woman is empowering women with a path to re-enter college.
When you think of college, you think of teens and young adults on their way to a higher education. But many undergraduates are actually students re-entering college. That's where a woman named Janet Denson is stepping in to help.
What a blessing that was, just to be able to encourage them and to let them know that they're okay. They can make it in spite of everything. They have another chance.
Janet Denson does many things, including caring for her elderly father, as well as training others to care for other people who are aging. But it's her work helping young women return to college that inspires her the most.
Those are the type of things I enjoy doing, helping people, helping women to succeed.
She does this through her nonprofit organization called Love Images.
For the past 7 years, we've had scholarships made available to women who were going back to school, to finish their degree or to go to school to start their degree as a 25 and above female.
Attending college for the first time is already a big financial investment. One of these students' biggest issues is finding enough financial aid so they can finish their degree.
I had a young lady who received just in time to pay her tuition to continue with her nursing degree, master's degree. Since then, she has completed that and is now working on her doctorate in nursing.
That young lady was DELANA Gardner.
I was very nervous. I felt intimidated. Initially, I had been out of school for a while. I didn't really know what the atmosphere was going to be like. And initially, I had to visit the campus, although it was an online program.
A deeply religious woman, Denson says she does her work in the name of God.
Well, I've always been that type of person where I just have a spirit of help, giving, and that type of thing.
So far, Denson has helped at least 7 women return to college. One is now a psychologist, another is pursuing a PhD in social work. I'm Brandi Henry, Cronkite News.
Many people don't know that Jesse Owens spent his final years here in Arizona.
And now his medals are inspiring others to fight for their goals. The nutrition coach at Chaparral High School is the keeper of those medals. They were given to Jerry Van Gass by Owens' daughters. They asked him to show the medals to young track and field athletes. Jesse Owens won these gold medals at the 1936 Olympic Games in Berlin, Germany. Van Gass wants to restore his legacy and name in the Phoenix area.
Everywhere I go, he's been. His influence has been everywhere in the valley, and yet in his biography, there's one sentence that he passed away here.
Jesse Owens lived in Arizona for 9 years before passing away back in 1980.
Van Gass is making these efforts in order to restore Owens' legacy here in Arizona.
Ray Anderson, the athletic director of Arizona State, was named in Forbes magazine's list of most influential minorities in sports. Anderson was number 21 on the list, joining the likes of athletes and sports business leaders. Since taking over in Tempe, he has revamped many of the school's programs and brought in Olympic-level coaches, including Bob Bowman, swim coach of gold medalist Michael Phelps.
According to a 2014 study by the Institute for Diversity and Ethics in Sports, 18% of NCAA Division I athletes are African American. But in coaching ranks, the numbers are even lower. Just 8% of men's coaches and only 7% of women's coaches are black. Cronkite News reporter Zuriel Loving took a look at the athletic departments of Arizona's 3 public universities to see how they compare.
Diversity is a work in progress at the athletic departments of Arizona's 3 state universities: Arizona State, University of Arizona, and Northern Arizona. Across the 49 varsity teams at the 3 schools, there are just 3 African American head coaches: Arizona's women's basketball head coach, Nia Butts, Arizona track and field head coach, Fred Harvey, and Arizona State's newest hire, Stevie Mussie. Arizona State Vice President for University Athletics, Ray Anderson, who himself is just one of 12 African American athletic directors at the Division I level, hired Mussie last month to lead the women's volleyball program.
Anderson has said that he makes it a priority to include diverse candidates in all of his coaching searches since arriving at ASU in January 2014.
Always looking to make sure when you're interviewing for a position that you have what we call diverse slates, which means a variety of folks that you want to interview and talk to and give an opportunity to present their case, and that means inclusion candidates, women, people of color.
When Anderson hired MUSSIE, she became one of 2 women of color to lead a collegiate volleyball program at the Division I level in a Power 5 conference.
It's not just white males that are coaching volleyball, it's women, men of color, women of color. And so it's just kind of a nice thing for everyone to see, and I think it'll continue to trend upward.
Volleyball has a low number of African Americans playing the sport as well. According to NCAA diversity research, just 10% of the women playing Division I collegiate volleyball are Black. But University of Arizona assistant sand volleyball coach Taiba Hanif Park hopes that her presence will allow her to be a role model for girls that may be interested in the sport.
To be a part of that heritage in terms of sports, not as many Black role models in the sport, but coming from like a Rita Crockett or Flo Hyman in the indoor team, and being able to be here in a position where I can kind of excel and push the sport forward means a lot to me.
For NAU associate track and field coach Kenny McDaniel, the role is flipped. Of his 20 sprinters, 14 are Black. He strives to provide an environment that is welcoming for all his athletes.
When you create an environment where any student athlete feel comfortable, they feel safe, they're willing to talk to you about things they might not talk with someone about that might not be I don't want to say skin color, but someone that they feel comfortable with.
The next frontier for African Americans, FBS Commissioner. There has never been a person of color to lead an FBS conference. In Tempe, Zuriel Loving, Cronkite News.
That's it for this special edition of Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us. For top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org.